How you doing? This is Lance Henriksen, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com.
All right, and welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I am Nasty Neil, and joining me this evening, we have the writers and directors of Nightlight, Scott Beck and Brian Woods. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks you guys for coming on. And let everybody know it's going to be in theaters and on demand March 27th. And for people out there, can you give us a brief synopsis of what the movie's about without giving too much away?
Of course. I mean, Nightlight is about five friends who go into the woods and scary stuff happens. And it's kind of based on this real life location called the Sea of Trees in Japan, which is it's this insane forest where people just go and commit suicide. It's the hub for suicide. So Nightlight imagines kind of an Americanized version of that forest where it's known for suicide.
Yeah, I thought about that when I watched the movie. So my co-host Annabella can't be here tonight, but she was in Japan just the other year, and she actually went there. And I was going to ask if that was connected or if it was based off something that is in America.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like, you can spend all day Googling it, and you just dig up these crazy facts about it, and certain like, images of it. It's just terrifying because you can see these artifacts that these people left behind when they went into the forest, and I think it just felt like one of these incredibly true stories that we really haven't seen tapped into movies. And I know now, like, Gus Van Sant, for instance, has a version of the Sea of Trees movie coming out, and I think David S. Goyer has another movie coming out. And so it's just this right playground to kind of, set a fictionalized story.
Yeah. And when you have something that is real, even if it's a different part of the world or anything, it kind of adds a different element, I think, to the story. It adds like a realism to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important to have kind of like horror is, I think, at its best when you can relate to it. I think, like, you look at Paranormal Activity, part of the success of those films is we all know what it feels like to go home at night and and go to bed and the covers start to move or you hear a weird sound. And so, like, really tapping the relatable is something we're always talking about, and tapping into something that's real and genuine.
Mm-hmm. When you bring up something relatable, I thought that, too, about... because a lot of the backdrop of the story is about teenage suicide, and that's something it's like a hard subject for everybody. And I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, can relate to that. Either they know somebody or have felt like that at some point in time. And since it's a supernatural film, having something like that you can relate to really helps, I think, get into the story.
Exactly. I mean, when you're talking about teenagers, like, ideally you're talking about something real, and then kind of as Brian was saying, like, you want to tap into something relatable and grounded when you're doing horror films. Very much the same way, like, The Exorcist isn't just a horror film, like, it's also, like, this great drama as well. And so I think having one foot in either genre is kind of the best way to kind of get your audience to start talking, at least.
Yeah, and as you said, Neil, like, we all know somebody who, whether it's a close friend or a family member, or maybe it's just a friend of a friend who has committed suicide, and certainly, like, cyberbullying is something that's very much present on our mind, and so yeah, we just kind of imagine this character. Scott and I first started writing Nightlight. Actually, we had just done an MTV pilot that we wrote and directed, and we picked up part-time jobs during the post process of that film. Working at AMC movie theaters, and so we were meeting a lot of teenagers and watching a lot of scary movies, and I guess just this kind of story emerged of this girl who, again, was kind of not based on anyone we worked with, but certainly felt like it was in the air. This girl who was very self-conscious and kind of an outsider, and was trying to fit in with the cool kids, and it was like she had missed this opportunity with her friend Ethan. He's I guess in the film, he's the character who is presented as thinking about suicide and kind of contemplating going to the forest to kill himself. And I don't know, it just really felt in the air. It was something that we certainly wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you guys working together. I know you've worked together, on movies before this, but a regular job working together. Is that how you guys met? Did you guys meet at a job, or were you guys just happen to be friends and got to, drop the same place so you could guys still be together?
Brian and I have actually known each other since we were 12 years old,
oh,
and
wow.
We grew up in the same small town in Iowa, and we just discovered that each of us had already started making movies with like our action figures, and
Yeah.
and we just progressed from there doing short films, and in high school we started making really bad low budget feature films, and just one thing led to another, and we did a pilot with MTV, and then that kind of opened the doors to Nightlight, but we've really had this great working relationship over the past, it feels like a decade and a half, really. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you guys I would assume you guys get along, but do you guys ever butt heads or anything? I don't know how like co-directing, totally works.
And we always have our arguments before we show up to set. Scott and I are meticulous storyboarders just because it gives us an opportunity to really hash out all of our differences. And we do have different opinions on scenes at times, whether that's during the writing process or directing process. But our relationship is one of kind of it's a healthy competition. It's the hope when we're at our best. The hope is that Scott will come to this table with an idea, and I'll be like, that's all right, but what if we tried this, and try to one up each other in a very healthy competitive way, and try to and honestly, like, movies are so collaborative anyways. It always becomes best idea wins, and certainly our team, while making this film, whether it was the awesome cast that we had, or it was our first AD or our cinematographer, really everyone was kind of collaborating to make this movie come alive.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you guys were writing it, did you always intend it to be a found footage film?
I guess we don't really consider it a found footage film, even though it certainly lives in that subgenre with some of the tropes. But for us, it was always more like a point of view movie, kind of like Enter the Void, I guess, is one of the closest comparisons. Just because we wanted to have this really immersive experience, but a lot of the problems in found footage movies is by the second or third act, when horror is happening, you're really wondering why the characters are still filming. But kind of like our unique point of view, which we kind of keep a secret throughout the marketing and also the first half of the movie, kind of that device is used to explain why we're still seeing things in the second and third act, and also has an emotional through line once you find out why this device is used there and who it relates to in terms of the characters of the story.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kind of coming up with this movie, it's like Scott and I talk a lot about Blair Witch Project, of course, and Paranormal Activity, which are inevitable comparisons. And we love those movies, but I think that as horror fans, we're feeling the same sort of fatigue that everyone else is with found footage. I think the kind of feeling, like when you hear like, oh no, another found footage movie, is that it's like it's going to be dingy and poorly lit, it's going to be super low budget, and that's not at all where we were coming from. We wanted to do a really elevated, high-end point of view movie, and the hope, the ambition, not saying we came close to pulling this off, but the ambition was to kind of elevate it a little bit and do something completely different.
I think all the settings in the movie look excellent. Was that how long did it take to find like a location that you felt would work?
It took a while. I mean, we ended up shooting in Salt Lake City area in Utah, which we had to go far, far away from the city to really find like those pockets of forest, because we shot it 100% on location. And so we were literally out in the middle of the night roaming around the forest. I mean, there's certain scenes like the train game where we actually shot on controlled train tracks with stunt performers. And then there's like the cave sequence where we actually stumbled across this great cave location that wasn't really on any maps. And when we found that, we were venturing into it with flashlights, kind of like the characters in the movie. And it was terrifying. I mean, it kind of tapped into what we were hoping to go for with that sequence in the film. So, it was a lot of fun just going out in the woods every night with a great group of cast and crew and making this movie happen.
Yeah. You mentioned the train scene, and I think when you do like a movie like this, a point of view movie, you always have to have some cool visuals that you haven't seen before, and that was definitely, besides just the movie itself, but that was definitely a cool visual with the train coming over the camera.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. That was a really fun scene to shoot. we showed up on location at these train tracks that our location manager had found for us, and our VFX team, it was kind of the tech scout, and our VFX team kept saying, like, guys, we can create a train with visual effects, it'll look amazing, and meanwhile our practical stunt guys were going, or we could just get a real train and shoot this live action. And so Scott and I were just kind of like, what would Chris Nolan do? Like, what would our heroes do? What would Stanley Kubrick do? Like, we really thought, it would be so much more exciting to get a live train. So we did that. Our production team hooked us up, and the shot in the movie is kind of this elaborate oneer where there's this kind of ballet of choreography between our cast members, and it's all timed to that train, that real freight train, just getting closer and closer and closer, and it was legitimately frightening when we were shooting that. And thankfully, our stunt team and our stunt girl Katie, they were very brave. I think that was like the best night of her life. Her adrenaline was pumping for sure.
Yeah. So was that one take then? The actual train going over the? Or did you have to do it a few times?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we had full control of the train, so we did about 7 takes, I think. But it all exists in one take, so it's like 5 or 6 minutes long, and we had our cinematographer, running out in front of the train to set the camera down exactly in like this little place, this little hole that we dug out, so that the train could go over it without destroying the $100,000 camera. And after each take, we would always have this big kind of huddle, this powwow as the train rolled back and reset its position, where the first AD and the train crew and our stunt team would all gather, and everyone would go, okay, that went really well. Are you comfortable with speeding the train up? Are you comfortable getting the stunt performer closer to the train? And each time trying to kind of up the ante until, as Scott said, about take 6 or 7, we pushed it more or less as far as we could go, and we're thankful for everyone's hard work, and honestly thankful for everyone's kind of adventurous spirit in pulling off something like that.
Yeah. And he said everything was, like all the locations were stuff you found. So the church location, was that like just an abandoned building? Did you spice it up or anything, or was it just as is?
Well, that was actually a build on location, but it was based off this creepy church that we knew as kids that was out in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, and it was painted purple on the outside. And that always stuck with us because we wondered who in their right mind would paint a building, let alone a church, purple. Yeah. And so that was kind of the inspiration for it. But it was really cool because we found the location where we could build it. And I remember Brian and I arriving on set because we had seen the schematics for the church, but to see it standing in front of you, and it was 25 feet tall, and it had this, tall, great roof, that was just incredible. And, walking around in the attic, there was only I think 5 or 6 people that could be up there at the time or else it'd collapse. So it was just this creepy old place that felt like it had been there for ages. But in reality, it had been around for 2 weeks when we started shooting in it.
Yeah. Now, is Nightlight an actual game that you guys ever played? So when I was a kid, we used to play flashlight tag all the time, and I lived next to State Forest.
Totally. Yeah, we played flashlight tag. Absolutely. Yeah, Nightlight, it was a game that we played. I mean, it's more or less, it's more or less hide and seek with flashlights, but there's kind of an element of if you're too scared, it's kind of you want to scare the person who's playing it, and if they get too scared, they have to yell Nightlight, and everyone comes out. And we used to play flashlight games in the forest all the time. Growing up in the Midwest, that was just something kids do. And it was funny when we had finished the script and our agents were taking it out on the town to try to sell it, it was really interesting to see who related to the premise and who didn't. For example, people who grew up in Los Angeles and lived in LA their whole life, they didn't really get what flashlight games were. They were is this something people actually do? But for us, it's yeah, absolutely. That was part of not only our childhood, but even in high school, it's fun to go to the forest and try to scare yourself. And I imagine you feel the same way as a horror fan. You're always looking for that next thrill, and there's really nothing scarier than being alone in the forest with a flashlight. Even when it's when houses are nearby, or it's just, there's something innately terrifying about that. Probably goes back to our our origin as human beings, just, you know, that kind of that fear that preserves our life to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, during the winter, we'd go up in the forest and sled all winter, and then during the summer, it'd be flashlight tag every night. So.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you guys believe in demons or ghosts?
Good question. You know, it's funny, as filmmakers, as people like writing scary movies, the instinct is kind of like, well, we're as writers, we're kind of creating this up out of thin air. But Scott and I are I think our point of view on life is that we don't know, right? Like, it's almost arrogant to presume that, like, I know or don't know if ghosts exist. So we kind of just have this healthy, skepticism to a certain extent, but also we're open to anything.
Yeah. There's certainly, you know, weird instances in your life where you certainly, you know, something doesn't click 100% and you kind of feel like there's this eerie aura around you. And so those moments are few and far between, but when they happen, they're the most terrifying things ever, and I think they always make you question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight, and everyone should check out Nightlight on theaters and on demand March 27th. And are you guys going to continue to work in the horror genre?
We love genre movies. We love horror.
Yeah, there's a couple projects we have currently in the script phase that certainly are horror films in the vein of like The Conjuring or The Sixth Sense. So we hope to bring those to the screen soon.
Excellent. Well, thanks, and continued success.
Cool.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Neil.
This is Kevin Van Hentenryck, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com. And if you lift the lid of the basket, you die.